who's a 4 times TED speaker with more than 26 years experience. He has coaching experience with global CXOs from different companies like Dell, PayPal, Tata, Societe Generale, among others. Harsh Johari is going to privilege us by sharing his experience in VUCA leadership. So please welcome Harsh Johari.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning to everybody, and I welcome to all of you for today's session. And it's been an honor and privilege to be part of this conference. VUCA leadership, or leadership in crisis, or leadership in times of uncertainty, is a topic very close to me. I speak a lot about it. I write a lot about it, and it's one of my coaching practices. So we'll talk about what VUCA is, how it has changed in the face of the pandemic in the last 18 months, and what you should do as business leaders, as entrepreneurs, as professionals going forward to be able to manage change and uncertainty in a more confident manner. Now, before I begin, let's imagine a scenario. Let's say that, let's say you are a captain of a ship, and your ship is going from one port to another. And in the middle of the ocean, let's say your GPS fails, and you don't have any backup GPS. What will happen? You will be lost in the middle of the ocean. You will not know how to go forward, how to navigate your ship. You will not know which way to go. And this is exactly what happened to all of us when this pandemic hit us about 18 months back, because there was no reference point, there was no playbook. And whether it was entrepreneurs, whether it was business leaders, whether it was professionals, all of us were completely caught off guard. And the word which came to all of us mind was VUCA. And for all those who do not know, VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, VUCA. Now, VUCA has always been a part of the business vocabulary for long. It's been out there for several decades. So it was not something new. But what we realized was that the crisis which hit us about 18 months back was way, way bigger than VUCA. So a lot of old leadership frameworks were thrown out of the window, thrown out of the toss, because this was something which nobody had experienced before. There was no reference point where to start and where to end. People didn't know. So now what we are experiencing about leadership is way beyond VUCA. It's more about how do you deal with uncertainty going forward? How do you make it your typical leadership style as you navigate ahead in these challenging times? Now, before I talk more about leadership, there are 3 things which have happened in the last 18 months, which all of us should keep in mind. 3 beliefs in a way have been shattered. First was, we always used to believe that it is always about survival of the fittest. But this crisis actually told us that it is not about survival of the fittest. It is about survival of the fastest. Again, whether you are a business leader or entrepreneur does not really matter, but the person who is able to adapt quickly, who's agile, who's nimble, fastest, that is the person, or that is a team or the business which will win the game. The second thing which we came to know was that the velocity of change happening around us is way, way faster than any of us can really react to or embrace. And I use the term velocity consciously because velocity has 2 components. There is a direction and there is a speed. So the speed at which things are changing around us in the world, and the direction where it is taking, whether it's COVID today, something else tomorrow, digital transformation happening. So it's much faster than any of us can really embrace. And if you are somebody who feels that, no, I'm immune to all these changes, this will not impact me, believe me or not, sooner or later, you will get impacted. So it's no more about playing the catching game around the change curve, but how do we actually stay ahead of the change curve is the really new normal for the leadership. And the third thing, there's a very famous quote by Marshall Goldsmith, who's the world's leading executive coach. And he says that what got you here will not take you further. And this is what was exposed during the last 18 months, that a lot of leadership style, a lot of beliefs, a lot of mindsets got challenged. And now when we need to go forward, we need a new way of thinking, a new way of doing things. And all this means that it is time for change, whether you like it or not. Change in any form brings uncertainty, brings anxiety, brings discomfort. But if you don't change today, either as an individual or as a business leader, eventually you will end up paying a huge cost in the long run. Now, before we go step into the future and say, how should I prepare myself for remaining part of 2021 and 2022 and beyond, it's important for us to take a pause and reflect back. what has happened in the last 18 months? So I'll share a few set of questions which I called reflective leadership. And if you have a pen and paper, I would strongly encourage that you take notes of these questions. And if not now, go back and reflect. You can do this individually, you can do this with your teams, and really see how far all of you have come in the last 18 months. So the first question you should ask yourself is that, what have I been able to achieve, both individually as a leader and as a team in the last 18 months? So just go back and reflect, what have been your major accomplishments? It could be as simple as I've been able to manage this situation, or you've been able to even drive business growth. You've been able to learn a lot. There are so many things you could have done, but it's time to really take a step back and pause and say, how far have I really come in this journey in the last 18 months? And more importantly, the second question, what allowed me to continue going and growing, right? How did I accomplish these achievements? What were some of my strengths or values which allowed me to navigate these tough times and reach this point? So 2 questions, what have I achieved in the last 18 months, individually and as a team? Second is, how did I achieve that? What kept me going? What are the strengths I displayed? What are the values I displayed which allowed me to move ahead? The third question you should ask yourself is that, what have I learned in the last 18 months? And how am I going to take this learning forward? You could have learned that, there is self-care is important, mental well-being is important, resiliency is important, building trust is important. What have you learned about yourself and also about your teams in the last 18 months? And how are you going to take this learning forward? And the last question I strongly encourage for all of you to ask is that, what is that I could have done better? So again, I know that hindsight is always 20/20, but if you really look back, there would be certain things which you could have done better. So it's a good time to reflect before you think about the future, saying, taking all these learnings from last 18 months, what is it I could have done better? So once you do this reflection, then you are well prepared to say, I am now ready to step into the future. So now let's look at the whole concept of leadership in the new normal. I know you call new normal, new world order, whatever you want to call, does not really matter. But there is a new framework of leadership, and I'll share about 10 specific points which you have to demonstrate as a leader to make sure you drive and lead change as you go forward. There are 3 things. Leadership in the new normal means 3 things. New way of doing things, new way of thinking, and most importantly, new way of being as a leader. The word being is very, very important, because a lot of times we get caught in day-to-day, we get caught in goals, we get caught in strategy, action planning, but we don't step back and think that, who do I want to be as a leader? Who do I want to be as a person, as a professional? Because everything else you do, the goals, the actions, the decisions you take, should lead you to a future state of who you want to be. So if you have a pen and paper, you can write down this question, or a statement, I want to be a leader who, and then fill in the blanks. Whatever comes to your mind. I want to be a leader who wants to lead with trust and empathy. I want to be a thought leader in my industry. I want to be a leader who's known for, let's say, building teams. Who do you want to be? And then you work backward and say, everything which I'm going to do, every action I'm going to take, every decision I'm going to take will be in alignment to who I want to be. So it's a good time, especially if this is the last quarter of 2021, it's a good time to really see that over the course of the next couple of years, who do I want to be and what do I want to be known for? And that will determine your leadership style and the actions which you take going forward. So what are the essential elements of the leadership in the new normal? The first is leading with trust, empathy, and compassion. Now you may say this is something which you have already heard, what is new in this, but what we realized in the last 18 months, the degree of trust or the element of trust and empathy has increased multiple fold, and it has to become a part of your normal style of leadership. What do you mean by trust? Now, when we were working in physical offices, physical spaces, people were in front of you, you could really see them. You could see what they're doing, what they're not doing. But when people are working from home, sometimes you get this sense of loss of control. What are people doing? And sometimes that creates a trust deficit. And that is where leaders have to make sure that they maintain that degree of trust. And you can approach trust from different angles. You can say, I trust you by default. That's my trust position when it comes to my teams. Or you can say, you have to gain my trust by doing certain things. Or you can say, no, I will gain your trust. So depending on your leadership style, trust becomes a core element of your leadership. For example, let's say your team member is working from home and they call up and say, my internet is not working. You as a leader, will you trust them by default, or you will start questioning them? So that's why the element of trust has to be much more now when you engage with your teams. Empathy and compassion. Sometimes people interchangeably use these terms, but they're two different terms. And again, we have seen the need for empathy, the need to connect with people as a person, knowing what they're going through, knowing how they're feeling has been paramount in the last 18 months and will continue to be paramount because of this hybrid working model which might come up, and people will continue to remain impacted by this crisis. So empathy means that you are feeling for someone, you're stepping into their shoes, trying to understand how they are feeling, what they're going through, and you're being for them. Compassion means while you're feeling for them, you also want to do something. You have a desire to help them. You want to take some action. And the key thing is that as a leader, you need to understand when should I be empathetic versus when should I be compassionate. It is not a default position in all the cases. A lot of times your team members may say, I just want you to hear me out. I don't want any solutions. I don't want any help. Just hear me out. Give me a safe space to express. So that is why empathy and compassion have to be a core part of your leadership style as you go forward. The second element of leading in the future is being vulnerable. Now, you must have heard this term a lot, vulnerability, and a lot of time people feel that if I'm being vulnerable, it's a weakness. How can I talk about myself? What will people think about me as a leader? But what this crisis also shown is that leaders who have come up much stronger are leaders who have been able to be vulnerable, who have been able to express how they felt, what is going on, are they struggling, do I need help? And these are questions a lot of us struggle. These are some statements we struggle to make. Like how many of us are okay to admit in front of a team saying, I'm struggling, or I don't know the answer, or I need help, or I'm feeling anxious, I'm worried. It's not easy to expose yourself because you feel that what will people think of me? Will people think me less of a leader? But that is not the case. When you expose yourself, when you express yourself freely to people, and people don't take advantage of you, then real trust can be built. So make sure that you start building vulnerability as one of your core strengths and style of leadership as you go forward. The third element of leading in the new normal is about developing a growth mindset. Now, again, the concept of growth mindset has been there for long, but again, this crisis highlighted that leaders who have had a fixed mindset, who have always believed in a certain way of doing things, they always felt that this is what will work for me. A lot of those leaders felt challenged when this crisis hit them. But when you look at a growth mindset where you're saying, I want to grow, I want to learn from failures. There is nothing which is impossible for me as long as I am willing to learn and work. There are chances that you will grow and your business will grow. A fixed mindset person will always feel that the potential is limited, their capabilities are limited. They will always treat failure as something which will, from which they cannot learn, and it will always pull them down. They don't want to accept feedback. And they are not ready to cut out of a comfort zone. But a growth mindset person says, I want to grow. If I can learn, if I can work, if I can improvise, if I can learn from failures, there is no reason why I should not be successful. So thinking and starting developing growth mindset, both for yourself and for your teams. That is very important as you go along and try to lead your teams into the future. And something connected to growth mindset is getting out of your comfort zone. Again, a cliche term you would have heard a lot. People say that growth lies outside the comfort zone and we should push ourselves for outside the comfort zone. But the fact is that all of us as humans crave comfort. We crave safety. We crave security. We don't want to change. We don't want to disturb the equilibrium. We don't want to disturb the status quo. But the fact is that whatever is making you comfortable today is also stopping you from growth. Now, what is the definition of comfort zone? The simplest definition of comfort zone is Wherever you are today in life, that is your comfort zone. Whether it is business, whether it's relationship, whether it's health, whether it's entrepreneurship, whatever, wherever you are today, that's a comfort zone. And this is based on the premise that you can do so much more in life. You have so much more potential as individuals, as leaders, but you get comfortable. So go back and ask yourself these questions. Can I have a better job? Can I have better relationship? Can I have better health? Can I increase my business? Can I have better relationship with my teams? Yes, it is very much possible, provided that you push yourself. So think about it. What is today making you comfortable? And what are some of the actions you can start taking to get out of your comfort zone? So that's the fourth element of leading in the new normal. The fifth element, and it's something which many leaders miss out, is developing creative mindset and an imaginative mindset, creativity and imagination. And this is not a normal part of our leadership, because most of us, for a large part of our lives and for a large part of our work, we think from our left brain. Left brain is all about numbers, logic, data, evidences, process. So major 90% of the time we are using only a left brain. The right brain is something which we use as a child when we are very creative, when we are we are very imaginative, but as we grow, we get settled into a structure and a framework, and our right side of the brain is very less used. Right side of the brain is all about creativity, imagination, feelings, emotional intelligence. Unfortunately, it is not as used as the left side of the brain. But what this crisis also showed us, that when you are faced with certain challenges or problems which you have never encountered, you need to get creative. You need to get creative in terms of how you manage yourself, how you manage your business, how you interact with people, how do you communicate, how do you work. And that's why developing creative mindset, creativity, and imagination becomes a very strong skill set and a need for the future. Now, this is something which will not naturally come to a lot of us, because we are used to working in a structured environment. And creativity is all about being unstructured, it's about time and space. It's about ideas which may not seem possible today, but could be viable in the future. So it's something which needs to be developed and nurtured over a period of time. It's something which will not just happen like that. So I strongly encourage that start thinking that how can I increase my creativity and imagination when I'm looking at day to day, whether it's work or personal life. The next element of leading in the new normal is all about letting go. What are you willing to let go as a leader? What is today holding you back? As I said, a lot of leaders, a lot of us individuals also, we have a fixed mindset. We have a fixed belief system. This is how the world works. This is right. This is wrong. This is what has made me successful. And we hold on to it for too long. It's like an excess baggage. Like when you go to an airport, if you are carrying excess baggage, what will happen? You have to pay some excess baggage charges. And if that baggage is really important, then you would pay the charges. If not, then you have to leave the baggage behind, because otherwise you'll have to pay that extra charge. Same thing is with all our past beliefs and mindset. At some point, by remaining in that past belief system, you are actually limiting your growth. So go back and ask yourself questions. What are you not willing to let go? What are you holding on to too much? And if you are able to let go, what would be possible for you as leader, right? Let's say, for a simple example, let's say you value hard work a lot. So, and you've always believed that hard work is the key to success. And that is how you have grown in your career. You've worked hard and you've grown and reached a certain point. But that may not be true going forward. A lot of times it is not about hard work, it is about smart work. A lot of times you may be willing to work hard, but your team members may not be willing to work hard. A lot of times working hard may actually make you completely stressed and overwhelmed. So that is where you have to start questioning that, am I holding on to this belief that hard work is the only route to success? Am I holding on to it too tightly for too long? And should I now let it go and be open to the fact that sometimes it is about hard work, sometimes it is about smart work? Be open to the fact that I may be willing to work hard, others may not be willing to work hard. It's not that they don't want to work, it's just that they don't want to work the same way I want to work. So what are you willing to let go? And when you let go of some of these old beliefs and mindsets, a lot of new possibilities start opening up for you. Self-care. I think the previous talk was also a lot about mental well-being, but self-care has been to the core in this pandemic. But I want to talk about self-care at a leadership level. A lot of times we expect leaders to take care of the teams and manage the show, but what about leaders themselves? All of you are business leaders, you are going through a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety on your own. But how do you then prioritize self-care? And more importantly, how do you create a right balance between self-care and care for your teams and others around you? It's not a choice between this or that. It's not a choice, it's an and choice. I have to take care of myself and I have to take care of my teams. I have to create that right balance, because if I don't take care of myself, then I'm not taking care of my mental well-being, physical well-being. Then the way I interact with the world, the decisions I take may not be optimal, and it may impact my own productivity, my own performance. And at some point, it will start impacting my teams and businesses. So I have to take care of myself. It is a priority. I have to create the right balance. Self-care does not being selfish. You're saying I'm important, you are important, and hence let's create a right balance. The eighth point around this, or the eighth element of leading in the new normal, is around developing a big picture thinking. Again, what we have seen in this crisis, that a lot of leaders are very good in what they do on day-to-day work, right? They are good in execution, they are good in delivery, but they don't think enough into the future. They don't have strategic thinking. And it is important for leaders to from time to time zoom out and really see what is the big picture. Where is my business heading? Where is the industry heading? What are the trends happening? What does the future hold for me? What is the future state I want for my teams and my business? So thinking about the future is important. You may be very good at what you do today, but then you will always be known as somebody who's good in execution, who's good in delivery, but not in thought leadership about the future. So developing that big picture thinking is really important to really see what is going to happen in my industry. For example, a lot of industries, digital transformation is happening at a rapid pace. How will this change my industry? How will this change me as a leader? How will it change my profile, my teams? So there, from time to time, you have to step away from day to day and start thinking more about the future. Not just solving the problems of the present, but also anticipating what problems could come into the future and how do I prepare myself and my teams for that. That is all about developing big picture thinking. The ninth element of leadership in the new normal is about just making change as part of your leadership style, right? As I said, change in any form will bring in discomfort, anxiety, worries, fears. And it's not about I have to wait for something to happen to change. How can I all the time be ready for change? Because I don't want to be a firefighter. I don't want to be doing firefighting all the time. I want to be known as a change leader. I want to be known as an agile leader who's constantly ready to evolve, ready to adapt, and not waiting for change to be forced on us. So how do you make change as a part of your leadership practice is the question. And the final point I'll say is around being resourceful as a leader. And I'm intentionally using the word resourceful. I'm not using the word resilience. Resilience is the ability for us to bounce back from setbacks. But you don't want to wait for setbacks to happen and then bounce back, right? Resourcefulness means that how can you prepare yourself? How can you anticipate things and prepare yourself beforehand? So being resilient as a leader is important, but being prepared for the future events is also important. So how do you become more resourceful? Resources could be time. It could be energy. For example, let's say you want to spend more time with your teams, but if your day-to-day is packed end to end, then you will not be able to spend time. You want to have a one-to-one conversation with someone, but you may say from back to back, I'm in meetings. Then how are you going to get the time to have that one-to-one conversation? So how can you get resources around time? How can you create time? Energy is again a great sign. So how can you get resourceful to create energy in a way? Sometimes you may be feeling low. Sometimes things may not be happening the way you would want. But how can you create positive energy and show up powerfully? So that's what I meant was, how do you become more resourceful as a leader? Resiliency and resourcefulness both are important as you go ahead. So these were the 10 elements of being ready for the future as you prepare for 2022 and beyond. I'll quickly repeat is the first is leading with trust, empathy, and compassion, being vulnerable as a leader, being ready for change and ambiguity, stepping outside your comfort zone, developing a growth mindset, developing creative imagination and creative thinking, being resourceful as a leader, taking care of yourself as well as care for teams. So really maintaining the right balance between self-care and care for the teams, developing the big picture thinking. These are the core elements of preparing yourself for the future as a leader, as an individual, as an entrepreneur, and not just for yourself, but also for your teams. And also taking some time to reflect, as I said, share those questions, really taking a pause from time to time and seeing what's really happening, how far have I come? Because sometimes when you slow down, it can actually help you to speed up. Now, when you embrace all these elements, there are a few things which I also want to leave as a parting thought about the future. As I said, who do you want to be? So this is the right time. The last quarter of the year is the right time to really understand what is the vision I have for myself and for my teams. What is the future state I want to envision for myself and my teams, really? It's a good time to think about that. And this is not about goals or strategy or action. This is about a state that I want my teams to be known for, or I want to be known for this, or my vision for myself is this. The actions and the goals and the strategy all becomes a means to achieve that. So it is not about goals. A lot of leaders get caught into goals and business planning, but the fundamental question is that if you're able to achieve these goals, if you're able to achieve this business plan, what will happen? Who will you become? So I would encourage you to start on that point and then come backwards saying, if I want to be a leader, let's say, who's known to lead with trust and empathy, what should I start doing? So think about your vision about the future. Also think that in order to achieve that vision, what needs to change, either in yourself as an individual or with your teams. And what sort of support you need, what sort of organizational support you need, what sort of family support you need, what sort of environmental support you need to be able to reach that vision of yours. These are some questions you should start thinking as you plan for 2022 and beyond. And the parting thought I want to leave is that, look, there's a famous quotation by Leo Tolstoy who said that everybody wants to change the world, but nobody wants to change himself or herself for that matter. So irrespective of what change we're talking about, the process or any form of change will begin with you as a leader. So when you start thinking about change, that is where you start embracing change. And when people start seeing you embracing change, they feel inspired, they follow you. So the process of any change has to start with you and not with anybody else. So that's really it. Finally, I mean, in my experience, I coach a lot of senior leaders. I interact with a lot of them. I've primarily seen two types of leaders. The first set of leaders who want to remain fixed, who want to maintain a fixed mindset, who want to remain present to the past. They want to retain the old way of thinking, doing, and being, because that is what has worked for them, and they just want to stick to that. The second set of leaders who are saying, I want to embrace change. I want to develop a new way of thinking. I want to develop a new way of doing things. I'm ready to challenge my beliefs. I'm ready to challenge my mindset. I'm open to new ideas. The question is, which type of leader you are? Are you somebody who wants to remain in the past and get imprisoned by the past way of thinking, or do you want to develop a future way of thinking? That's a question I want all of you to go back and think. And that's really from my side. Look, I'm available on LinkedIn. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I'll share my contact details. Anybody wants to reach out. But I'm going to open up for Q&A now.
Thank you, Kash. This was a very insightful explanation of how leadership in the VUCA world should be. And to be honest, I have a few questions for you. So that's coming from me and my team here, but eventually we will get more questions from the platform. So what I understand from what you just said, that VUCA, to fight, actually, to be able to manage VUCA is again to use VUCA. So when we are talking about being in a world where we are like volatile, we need vision, right? So this is what you're saying about the future, which I totally adhere to it. And then when you say that we have like uncertainties, we need to have understanding, right? And then when we talk about complex, clarity come into play, which you just said. And the last one, this is where I want to stress a little more. So when we say that we have ambiguity, I think that we need to be all agile, right? So we need to change, we need to adapt. But now, all this coming up with what you just said about empathy, understanding, trusting by default. So working from home for leaders is very critical here. We have seen a lot of abuse about people who are overusing it with us, like developers telling us they are ill when they are not ill, or they are trying to take more time to do stuff. You see what I mean? So how can you be creative in that aspect to deal with such situation?
I think the real thing you have to realize is how can you be authentic? I think that's the place to start with. Everything which you do has to align with your true intentions. For example, when you want to build trust, is it just for the sake of it, or you truly want to build trust? So being authentic should be the golden mantra. Whatever I do, whether I'm doing it at in office or at home, I'm really coming from a place of intention, true intention. This is my intention. It's not to show anybody, it's not for anybody else, it's about me. If I want to have a one heart-to-heart conversation, I truly want to have that. When I'm asking a team member, how are you? It's just not a question. I'm genuinely interested to know how are you. So I think the best way to look at it is that come from a place of authenticity. Be authentic as a leader, be true as a leader, and that will guide a lot as to how you want to take things forward. That would be my advice.
That's very clear. And again, coming up now to the second point where you talk about self-care, I think it is very important. As leader, we sometimes care more for the team and try to make sure that the team is okay, sometimes at our own I would sacrifice, I would say. So this is very important to have this self-care that helps people in. So do you have some tips here so that how can we make sure that in this book, us as leader can put our self-care a little more in the front so that we are able to help our team?
I think the best way to just create a routine around your day-to-day, right? Understand what are the things which bring energy and what are the things which drain energy from you. Right. And look, self-care could have, people have different practices. Some people, they do meditation, some people do yoga, some people do running, some people listen to music. It depends on what form, what works for you. And if you know what works for you, the simplest mantra is do more of it. And that's it. And sometimes it's a question of creating a routine. Sometimes it's a question of just taking time off, really, right? I think what we have also seen in this last 18 months, we have made busyness as a style of working. What people don't understand, busyness does not mean productive. You can be busy for 12 hours in a day and you could have achieved nothing at the end of the day. So it's taking time out as an intentional practice. In fact, I do a session for leaders, I say, do nothing. How can you create nothingness as a practice? That even for 15 minutes, I'm not going to do anything at all. I'm just going to sit, I'm going to observe people around me, I'm going to observe my surrounding, I'm going to absorb things and not do anything at all. So the way to look at self-care is one, what works for you, and different things will work for different people. Two is, can you make a routine out of it? Three is, can you be very intentional about it? And it does not mean that every day I have to run half an hour or every day I have to go for a walk half an hour. Maybe we start with 5 minutes, maybe we start with 10 minutes. Somewhere make that start and be intentional. Again, as I said earlier, intention is the key. If the intention is that I want to take care of myself because that is important, then you will figure out time. Even if it's 5 minutes, even if suppose reading makes you feel good, read 1 page, 2 pages a day. That's it. You don't have to say that I'm not having time. See, we can give a lot of excuses saying I don't have time, I don't have money, I don't have this, that. And we can fight for those excuses. Most people fight for excuses, why they can't do something. But when I use the word resourceful means why I should do something and how can I do it. And if you go back, you will realize that when things are important to you, you have to figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I think, like you say, we are in the last quarter of the year. This is a time to reflect and for us to be able to plan ourselves for 2022. And I think that was very inspiring. And I think this is what will happen. We are in a new world. We are building a new world. We are part of the change, like you say. We are part of the change. And this was great. So thank you. Thank you for the super presentation. I don't have any question. If anyone else has a question, please feel free to put it in the Q&A session. So let's just give it 1 minute more, and then we can.
Yeah, we have a few comments and questions from the audience. So one of the aspects is about really coaching leaders. So you've seen a lot of leaders recently, I guess. So what are the key mistakes you're seeing at the moment and key things to avoid?
You're saying what key mistake leaders are making?
Yeah.
I think the biggest mistake leaders are holding on to what has worked for them and they are not ready to let go. That's where, see, that's why I started saying, right, whatever has got you up to this point will not work in the future. That's a given. So the biggest mistake I see people making is they hold on to that, saying this has worked for me in the past, and they make an assumption that this will also work for me in the future. And that is what we have seen has got challenged, that everything which I worked for you in the past will not work for you in the future. So I think that's one of the biggest things which I find in leaders. And it is surprising because as you grow more and more senior, you actually start developing a more fixed mindset. Because you are now saying this is working, so this should be right. This is working. So you almost said this is how the world should behave. This is how the world should work. So it's a paradox that leaders want their teams to have a growth mindset, but a lot of leaders end up developing a fixed mindset because they just know that certain things, one way of doing things, and they've never experienced it. So that's, I think, the biggest mistake I've seen leaders making. The second thing is being afraid to take risk. That's another mistake. Leaders don't want to, they want to be very sure, certain that I will not step into anything which I don't know of, because I don't know whether it will work or not. And risk and growth, in a way, go hand in hand, but risk and comfort don't go hand in hand. And
yeah, we have one of our attendees that is saying that being flexible, agile, and be able to pivot fast and often. What do you think about that statement?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
We have one of our audience saying that one of the points is being flexible, agile, and able to pivot fast and often. What do you think about that?
As I said, it now is a question of survival of the fastest. So what you are saying is correct. Being agile, being able to pivot fastest. But key thing is recognizing the point to pivot is important. You can wait for something to be forced on you, or you can start doing the change proactively. That's a choice you have to make. A lot of us wait for something to happen and then we change. But the question is, are you now proactively being agile? That's the question. So I think what you're saying is completely right, but being proactive is the key.
All right. Okay, thank you, Harsh. That was a very engaging session with a lot of energy. I'm sure that has inspired a lot of our attendees. Thank you a lot, Harsh.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you all for listening. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, for our next session, we'll be having Ike